Right in the middle of a lavish Los Angeles wedding, the groom suddenly shouted, "You're not allowed in here." All eyes turned toward an elderly woman in worn clothes, holding a tattered straw basket. "I'm your mother," she said, and the entire room fell silent. But what shocked the bride wasn't just that. It was when her husband whispered, "She's been dead for years." So who is this woman? And what secret has been hidden behind that red scarf she's worn for 30 years? Don't blink. The sun rose slow and steady over the brittle plains of Meadowville, Texas, a town too small for secrets but too proud to admit despair. There in a clearing where dry grass curled like old newspaper stood a woman named Mary Caldwell. Her hands, knotted and dust-covered, molded around a weathered trowel, smearing mortar between bricks as if each layer could hold her world together. Mary wasn't young. The decades had carved her like stone. She bore the kind of tired that not even sleep could touch, etched in the slump of her shoulders, in the lines around her eyes that had seemed too much, and in the fading strength of her arms that still refused to quit. The wind, dry and disinterested, tugged at the edges of her scarf, the same red scarf she'd worn every day for nearly 30 years. It had been a gift from her late husband, Jack, back before the cancer, back when life was full of simple dreams and quiet Sunday mornings. Now, Jack was buried 2 towns over in the Hillwood Cemetery, under a sycamore tree that never bloomed, and Mary was alone with a wheelbarrow of bricks and a back that cracked like old floorboards. Bricklaying had never been her dream, but then again, dreams were a luxury she'd stopped affording a long time ago. This wasn't about want. This was about Alex Caldwell, her son, her everything. She remembered the day she decided to send him to college, the day her palms bled from scrubbing the church floor for $27 and a stale muffin. It was also the day Alex came home, his face pale with embarrassment, carrying a letter from the admissions office of Stanford University. "Mom," he had whispered, "I got in." And she had smiled wide, proud and tearful, though her stomach ached from hunger. That same night, she sold her late husband's wedding ring for the deposit. The rest came from laying bricks, cleaning gutters, working 2 shifts at the diner, and later, when even that wasn't enough, selling her blood plasma twice a month. All for Alex. She told herself that if she worked hard enough, long enough, the world would reward her son, and maybe, just maybe, he'd remember the woman who made it possible. Alex had gone to California, graduated magna cum laude, married a city girl named Samantha, and landed a high-level executive position in a real estate firm in Los Angeles. The last time he called was 2 Christmases ago, a rushed 5-minute conversation filled with, "I'm busy, Mom, and I'll call you next week," but next week never came. Still, Mary didn't complain. Love never asks for receipts. She waited faithfully, quietly, like all the good mothers do, until the day she heard the news. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, a widow who ran the second-hand shop, who came to her door with a wrinkled flyer in hand. "Mary," she said, "did you know your daughter-in-law is pregnant again?" Mary stared at the photo. There was Alex, beaming, one arm wrapped around Samantha, who cradled her belly like a porcelain doll. The photo was tagged at a charity gala, golden light, clinking glasses, and clothes worth more than Mary's annual income. "They're expecting," Mrs. Thompson said. "You going to visit?" Mary smiled, but her eyes missed it. "I'll bring her some eggs. The baby should start with something real." That night, she didn't sleep. She stayed up knitting a blanket from soft blue yarn that unraveled and retied with every stitch as she imagined a grandchild she'd never held. In the morning, she packed a basket with eggs, preserved peaches, and the blanket, and walked 5 miles to the Greyhound station. She didn't tell anyone, didn't call ahead. Her heart, naive in its aged loyalty, still believed a mother could never be unwelcome. The journey to Los Angeles was long and full of silences that reminded Mary just how far she was from Meadowville. The Greyhound's rickety windows let in city lights like flashing warnings. Mary gripped the basket in her lap, her scarf tight around her shoulders. Her hands trembled, not from age this time, but from hope. When she reached the gates of Alex's estate, she stood still for a full minute, wondering if she should ring the intercom. The house was like something out of a movie. Long white columns, trimmed hedges, a driveway that could host a parade. "Can I help you?" The voice on the intercom was sterile. "I'm Mary Caldwell. I'm here to see my son, Alex Caldwell." There was silence. Then a man in a security uniform approached from behind the gate. "Wait here," he said, eyeing her like a trespasser. A few moments passed. Then the gate opened slow and reluctant. Alex stood at the front steps, a phone still pressed to his ear. He looked at her, confused and displeased. "Mom," Mary smiled, lifting the basket like a child offering a gift. "I brought something for Samantha and the baby." Alex ended the call. "You shouldn't have come here," he said slowly, his voice void of warmth. Mary blinked. "But I wanted to see you. I didn't mean to barge in. I can come back later if." A woman stepped out of the doorway, tall, impeccably dressed, eyes sharp as diamonds. "Samantha, who's this?" she asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. This is Mary," Alex stammered, "an old friend from back home." Mary's smile faltered. "I'm his mother." Samantha's expression changed. Something cold settled into her features. "Alex told me he was an orphan." The words hung in the air like broken glass, sharp and unswept. "I'm his mother," Mary said. Samantha blinked once slowly, the way people do when recalibrating what they thought they knew. Alex stepped forward. "Mom, please, let's talk somewhere else." But it was too late. Samantha's brows lifted in quiet offense. "You told me your parents were dead, Alex. You said you grew up in the system." Alex didn't answer. He looked away, jaw clenched. Mary, who had spent a lifetime patching broken walls and smoothing cracks, sensed this fissure ran too deep. She looked at Samantha and softened her voice. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I just wanted to see my son. I brought some eggs and peaches. Last fall, I made a blanket for the baby." She held out the basket, hands trembling. Samantha took one step back, as if the gesture were a threat. "Why now, after all this time?" "I didn't know I wasn't welcome," Mary replied quietly. Alex finally snapped. "Mom, we've talked about this. You can't just show up. My life is complicated." Complicated. The word stung more than any curse. Mary nodded slowly, tucking her hands back into her coat. "I understand." But she didn't. Not really, not yet. Inside the mansion, everything smelled like lilies and leather polish. A marble staircase curled toward a skylight. There were paintings on the walls that didn't belong to any real place. Mary walked slowly, unsure where to look. Alex led her into a sitting room. Glass coffee table, velvet chairs, a wall of books no one read. Samantha followed, but stayed by the door. "Can I meet your little boy?" Mary asked. "Charlie's sleeping," Alex replied, too fast. "I could just peek in quietly. I brought him a little red sweater, made it myself." No, the room chilled. Mary placed the sweater on the couch. "Why, Alex? Why tell her I'm dead?" He sat across from her, elbows on his knees, as if confessing to a judge. "I had to. Her family, they're wealthy, Mary. They would have never approved if they knew I was raised by a single mom in a trailer, eating beans from a can. I told them I came from foster care. It made me sound more resilient." Mary swallowed. "So you buried me for a better story?" "It's not like that." "It is exactly like that." Her voice was flat, but her heart was heaving. Everything she'd built, brick by painful brick, had been erased so he could build a castle on top of her grave. The ring went missing the next morning. "My engagement ring. It's gone." Samantha's voice cut through the breakfast silence like a whip. The house exploded in motion, maids questioned, drawers opened, accusations muttered. Then Samantha looked at Mary, who had just emerged from the guest room with a smile and a tray of scrambled eggs. "You came yesterday," Samantha said, "and now my ring is missing." Curious timing. Mary froze. "I don't know anything about a ring." "We should check her things," Samantha said. Are you serious? Alex asked. She's the only outsider in this house. They turned to Mary. She opened her bag. Inside were a rosary, her knitting, and bundles of small bills, ones and fives, saved dollar by dollar, a quiet testimony of a hard life. No ring. Maybe it's hidden in her clothes, Samantha said. Mary's hands clenched. I have never stolen in my life. Then prove it, Samantha replied. Alex didn't stop them. They searched her pockets, her shoes, her coat. She stood humiliated in her own son's living room as hands that never touched a brick felt her up for diamonds. When they found nothing, Samantha only said she could have hidden it somewhere else. Mary didn't respond. She simply picked up her scarf, tied it tight, and walked out the door. Outside, the morning was cruelly beautiful. The sky was cloudless. The air smelled of gardenia and betrayal. She hadn't made it halfway down the driveway when the sound of tires screeched behind her. A black SUV, sleek and urgent, stopped just inches from her. A man stepped out, tall, sharply dressed, eyes full of thunder. Mary! She turned slowly. David, she whispered. It was him, older, broader, more polished, but unmistakable, her boy, the one who wasn't born from her body but from her love. He rushed to her and pulled her into an embrace that cracked whatever was left of her heart. I was driving by, he said, breathless. I saw your scarf. I told myself it couldn't be, but it is. They stood frozen like a scene in a movie. Who hurt you? He asked, voice shaking. I was just visiting Alex, she said. David's face turned to stone. Let's go. He opened the car door, but Mary didn't move. I don't want to cause trouble. You already have, and that's good. Let me take it from here. David didn't ring the doorbell. He kicked it. Alex opened the door, startled. David, what are you doing here? I came for my mother. Alex blinked. She's the only mother I've ever known, David interrupted. Samantha stepped into view. What's this about? David glared at her. You accused her of theft. You insulted her. You don't deserve to say her name. Samantha scoffed. We didn't know who she was. That's the problem. David growled. She's the reason I'm standing here, alive, successful. She's the reason your husband had a chance at anything. He turned to Mary. Let's go. Alex watched them walk down the driveway, his face pale with something halfway between rage and shame. Wait, he called out. Mary turned. Alex didn't speak, so she got into the car, and this time she didn't look back. The freeway was lined with evening light, golden amber fading into warm dusk, but the mood in David's SUV was quiet and heavy. Mary sat in the passenger seat, her hands folded neatly in her lap, the red scarf still faintly carrying the scent of plaster and draping loosely across her shoulders. She didn't speak much, but David did not expect her to. She was a woman of few words and immense depth, like a canyon formed over years by silent persistence. David stole glances at her between turns, each one slicing through his memory like a knife. He remembered her kitchen in Meadowville, the smell of cornbread and wood polish, the way she used to kneel by the window to pray, whispering hopes for two boys, one born of her body, the other of her kindness. He hadn't seen her in years, but nothing had changed. She was smaller, maybe thinner, the creases around her eyes a little deeper, but she still had that same quiet strength, the kind you didn't notice until it was the only thing holding up the roof. You could have called me, he said softly. I didn't want to bother you. You're the last person who could bother me. Mary gave a tiny nod, eyes still fixed on the road. He slowed as they approached a gated estate nestled in the Beverly Hills foothills. Unlike Alex's ostentatious mansion, this house was elegant but warm. Columns wrapped in ivy, a swing on the porch, yellow roses spilling from the garden beds. Home, David said. He led her inside like a prince ushering royalty. The air was filled with dinner, roast chicken, thyme, and something sweet, cinnamon maybe. From the kitchen emerged a woman with almond eyes and a soft smile. Emily, David's wife. Is this her? She asked. David nodded. Emily, meet Mary. Emily stepped forward without hesitation and embraced her. We've heard about you for years, she said. Welcome home. The house had the kind of silence that felt safe. There were no glares, no polished smiles masking contempt. Mary was shown to a guest room with soft blue walls and a stack of books on the nightstand. There were slippers beside the bed and a note, in case you forgot your family. Dinner was laughter and warmth. David insisted Mary sit at the head of the table. Charlie, David and Emily's 4-year-old son, offered her a crayon drawing that looked vaguely like a house. "This is you," he said, pointing to the stick figure with gray scribbles for hair. Mary's eyes welled up for the first time in a long time. She ate a meal without watching the clock, without folding her napkin with guilt, without wondering if her presence was too loud. After dinner, she stood at the sink, out of habit, washing dishes by hand. "Mary," Emily said gently, "please, you don't have to do that here." Mary smiled. "I like the feel of hot water. Makes my fingers remember who they used to be." David stepped beside her. "You built me, Mary, one brick at a time, and I'll spend the rest of my life repaying you." Mary didn't answer, but she placed a wet hand over his dry one. That night, as the house settled into quiet dreams, Mary lay awake staring at the ceiling. She wasn't angry. She wasn't bitter. She was just tired. But something had changed. She wasn't invisible anymore. The next morning, David's assistant arrived at the estate with a large white envelope. "What's this?" Mary asked as he handed it to David. David opened it slowly, revealing a golden embossed card with elegant calligraphy. "A birthday invitation," he said. "For you." "For me." David smiled. "You're turning 60 soon. That deserves a celebration." "I don't need a party." "No, but you deserve one." He knelt in front of her, letting the world see what they threw away. Mary laughed softly. "And what will they say when a bricklayer from Texas walks into a ballroom? They'll say they wish they had your backbone." Preparations began that afternoon. Emily helped Mary choose a dress, a deep burgundy gown with sleeves like ripples. She insisted Mary get her hair done. Mary protested, but David silenced her with a joke. "Just this once, trade your towel for a tiara." The venue was one of Los Angeles's finest hotels. The guest list included CEOs, politicians, influencers, people who lived in glass towers and believed themselves gods. And yet, the spotlight would belong to a woman whose hands had carried bricks and her son's future. David made sure of it. He even sent an invitation to Alex and Samantha. "Why?" Mary asked, holding the copy of the card. "Because they need to see. They won't come. They will." He looked at her, a quiet fire behind his eyes. "And if they don't, the world will see them for what they are." The ballroom glimmered with 1,000 lights, each chandelier casting golden reflections onto glassware so pristine it seemed made for gods. Waiters in white gloves floated like whispers, a string quartet playing softly in the background as LA's most powerful filtered into the venue, their suits sharp, their smiles practiced. At the center of it all stood David, confident in a navy tuxedo, greeting guests with the polished ease of a man who had climbed his way into the clouds and never forgotten the earth beneath him. And beside him, Mary. She wore the burgundy gown as though she'd been born into it, though her hands betrayed her history, rough, weathered, strong. Her hair was pinned up, silver strands softened by a light touch of makeup, her eyes sharp and unafraid. She was not a socialite, not a celebrity, she was something rarer. She was real. Across town, Alex adjusted his tie in the mirror of his luxury apartment, face pale. "Do we really have to go?" he asked. Samantha applied a final stroke of lipstick. "He invited us. We can't offend him, not now. Not when we're this close to finalizing the deal with his firm." Alex groaned. "He did this on purpose." "Then play along," Samantha said flatly. "Smile. Act impressed. And when the deal's done, we move on." She didn't mention Mary. Neither of them did, not yet. But they were thinking it. The ride to the hotel was silent. The moment Alex stepped into the ballroom, he froze. Mary stood on the far end of the room, surrounded by people, smiling as a congressman handed her a gift basket. "That's her," he whispered. Samantha clenched her purse. "She's the guest of honor." They tried to blend in, but it was too late. David had seen them. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and greeted them with a handshake that lasted half a second too long. "Glad you made it," he said coolly. Samantha forced a smile. "Lovely party." David ignored her. "My mother is over there. Why don't you go say hello?" Alex's lips parted, but no sound came. Mary turned the moment she felt eyes on her. She saw Alex. Her smile vanished. He approached slowly, hands in pockets like a schoolboy walking toward a punishment. "Mom," he began. "Mary," Samantha corrected quickly. "Let's not confuse things." David appeared at Mary's side in a heartbeat. "You will not speak to her like that." Alex raised his hands. "We're not here to fight." "No," David said. "You're here to witness." He clapped twice, calling the room to attention. The quartet stopped playing. "Ladies and gentlemen," David began, his voice amplified by the acoustics, "thank you for joining us to celebrate the 60th birthday of a woman who, without fanfare or favor, changed the course of lives." The room quieted. David continued, "She didn't come from wealth. She came from brick and sweat. She raised a child with nothing but determination and a promise. That child wasn't me, but I was lucky enough to be in her orbit, and I became her son, not by blood, but by grace." He turned toward Mary. "Tonight we honor Mary Caldwell, not because she's my godmother, but because she is a symbol of what this world desperately lacks: humility, sacrifice, and unconditional love." The room erupted in applause, all except Alex and Samantha. After the speeches, a woman from the crowd stepped forward, David's wife Emily, holding a small wooden box. "We'd like to present this to you," she said to Mary. "Open it." Inside was a bracelet, simple and silver, engraved with the words, "You were never invisible." Mary's hands trembled. "I don't deserve this," she said. "Yes, you do," David replied. "More than anyone." Alex stepped forward at last. "Mom, I was wrong." She looked at him quietly, then nodded. "You buried me alive," she said. "But I didn't die." Samantha scoffed. "Is this your revenge?" "No," Mary said. "It's my resurrection." The guests murmured in awe. Alex's face turned crimson. David cleared his throat. "Oh, one more thing." He turned to face Alex and Samantha directly. "Regarding our deal, it's off permanently. I don't do business with people who treat family like shame." Alex staggered back, speechless. "You can't. I just did." Later that night, when the ballroom had emptied and the candles were reduced to pools of wax, Mary stood by the terrace, overlooking the lights of the city. "Do you regret coming?" Mary smiled. "No, I regret ever thinking I didn't belong." David put his arm around her shoulders. "You built lives, Mary. Now it's our turn to build yours." 3 weeks had passed since the birthday banquet, the night Mary Caldwell was seen, celebrated, and reborn in the eyes of a city that had once swallowed her in silence. The attention was overwhelming. Newspapers ran stories about the bricklayer mother who raised a CEO. Talk shows invited her for interviews. One even suggested a book deal. But Mary declined every offer. Fame didn't interest her. Applause, she learned, was loud but fleeting, and her soul didn't need noise, it needed home. So she packed her scarf in her basket and quietly asked David, "Can you take me back?" David looked up from his phone, surprised. "Back to Meadowville?" Mary nodded. "I need to see the dirt roads again, the sky that doesn't wear makeup. I want to smell the bread I used to bake. I want to hear silence that's real." David hesitated. "You can stay here as long as you want." "I know," Mary said softly, "but I also want to remember who I was before the world tried to forget me." They drove through the country roads, past stretches of land where sunflowers stood stubborn against the wind, where fences leaned with age, and horses grazed without hurry. The town of Meadowville hadn't changed. The gas station still had its flickering neon sign. The church bell still rang every Sunday, and her little brick house, though chipped and weather-worn, still stood as she left it, with the red mailbox that leaned left like a crooked smile. David helped her unpack. Inside, everything smelled like cedar and cloves. Dust danced in the sunlight. Her old quilt still draped the couch. The tin can of flour she'd hidden behind the stove was still there, nearly full. "You sure you want to stay here?" David asked. Mary smiled. "For a while, maybe longer." Word spread quickly that Mary was back. Mrs. Thompson stopped by with muffins. Old neighbors came with casseroles and photo albums. Kids she used to babysit now had their own children and called her Ms. Mary with voices full of reverence. But not everyone stayed long. Some came awkwardly, ashamed of how they'd forgotten her. They didn't know what to say, so they said too much or nothing at all. Mary forgave them without asking. That's the kind of woman she was. One afternoon, as the sun began to melt over the horizon, a small white car pulled into the gravel driveway. Mary didn't recognize it, but when the door opened, her breath caught. It was Alex. He stepped out slowly, holding a small suitcase and a paper bag of groceries. Mary stood at the door, still as stone. "I wasn't sure you'd be here," he said. Mary said nothing. "I brought flour and butter. Thought maybe you could show me how to make your cornbread." Mary raised an eyebrow. "You want to cook?" "I want to remember what love tastes like." Her face softened. "You won't find it in a recipe." Alex looked down. "I know, but maybe I can find it here with you." Mary didn't move, but she opened the door wider. Alex stepped in. They sat at the kitchen table, the one where he once did homework, where she once wept quietly while calculating how to send him his next tuition payment, the same table that had once held more heartbreak than meals. "I lied," Alex whispered. Mary sipped her tea. "I buried you because I was ashamed of where I came from." "You didn't bury me," Mary said. "You buried yourself." Alex closed his eyes. "Can you forgive me?" Mary reached across the table, placing her hand on his. "I forgave you the day you were born." He wept. She didn't say anything more. She let the silence do the healing. The next morning, Alex helped fix the old fence out back. He asked questions about her childhood, about Jack, about the way she used to hang laundry to dry, even during snow. Mary answered with laughter, stories, memories. Sometimes she answered with silence. By the end of the week, Alex had extended his stay. By the end of the month, he bought a small plot of land nearby, and by the end of the year, he built a community center in her name, the Mary Caldwell House, a place for struggling families, single parents, and kids with big dreams and small wallets. He no longer introduced himself as a real estate executive. He said, "I'm Mary Caldwell's son." On her 61st birthday, the townspeople gathered in the church hall. No chandeliers, no orchestra, no golden invitations, just potluck dishes, laughter, hugs, and a cake made by Emily herself. Charlie ran across the room and jumped into Mary's arms. "Grandma, can I sleep over tonight?" "You can stay forever," she said. And when David stood to make a toast, he kept it simple, to the woman who taught us all what it means to be enough. Sometimes, the people who raise us aren't the ones who share our blood, but the ones who choose us, fight for us, and never stop showing up, even when the world turns them away. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and share this video with someone who still believes in the quiet strength of unconditional love.